Today I'm going to be answering the question, who pays the property taxes on a land contract? So who does pay the property taxes on a land contract? Well, by the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of how property taxes are handled when it comes to land contracts. Have you ever wondered who foots the bill for property taxes when it comes to a land contract? Have you ever been curious about how these agreements are even structured? Well, I'm going to answer these questions by first defining exactly what a land contract is. I'll then explain the strategy that is typically utilized when it comes to land contracts and why they're typically favorable for this type of strategy. And finally, I'll detail out the responsibilities of both parties when it comes to land contracts, specifically property taxes. If you're ready, let's go. A land contract is a legal agreement for seller finance purchase that doesn't require the bank to be involved. Instead, the buyer makes periodic or monthly payments to the seller until the actual sales price is paid in full. A land contract is sometimes called a bond for title or contract for deed. So what is the angle for a buyer and why would you want to utilize a land contract? Typically, it's an alternative for buyers that are not able to qualify for a traditional mortgage. If the buyer's credit has been damaged, or maybe they've been in a foreclosure or pre-foreclosure, or they haven't gathered enough money to be able to come up with a down payment for the piece of property. There could be a lot of different issues why the buyer is not able to engage in a traditional mortgage, thus utilizing and needing a land contract. Understand, when somebody doesn't go through a traditional mortgage, the reasoning could be a lot of different things, but a few challenges out there that exist. If somebody's ever been through a short sale, that is where somebody has to sell their home at a price lower than what's owed on the bank. And traditionally, they've had to miss maybe 2, 3, or 4 months of payments. And that's going to look really bad on their credit. Or if they've been through a foreclosure, this is where the bank has come in and actually foreclosed on the property. And a lot of times, in order for you to get another loan, you cannot have a foreclosure on your record for the previous 7 years. So there's a lot of people that maybe got bit during the last real estate crash or real estate bubble that utilized land contracts to be able to own property again. So what strategy have I seen where land contracts have been utilized more than other strategies? And that is something called a slow flip. So what is a slow flip? Well, it's actually a pretty neat strategy and one that is working really well in today's economy. And I'm actually utilizing this strategy for some of the properties that I'm finding in the Midwest. So first off, I'm looking for properties that are below $100,000. Between $50,000 to $70,000 is that sweet spot for me. And if I find a piece of property, I'm negotiating or trying to get it under contract for about 20 to 30% less than what it's being offered for. Now understand, because I want to do this, I'm having to put quite a few offers out there. So it might take me 10 to 15 offers to get one of these under contract. But once I have it under contract, I am taking a private money lender that I'm utilizing, and he's lending me money at anywhere between 8 to 12%. And I've got one right now that's between 8 and 9%. And I will take his money, borrow it, and I'll purchase this property outright. So let's say that I found a property that is listed for $70,000. And I will put an offer out there and try and get it under contract for $50,000. Once I do that, I'm buying it with cash. That's one of the reasons they're selling it to me fairly quickly, because I'm closing in 30 days and I'm paying cash. Now, once I have that property, I then go out and find a buyer for this property that's going to buy it from me for $70,000. Now, the reason they're willing to pay the price that was originally offered by the person I bought it from is because they cannot get traditional financing. And they look at this as an opportunity to own a home without having to put much of a down payment. So it works out really well for them. However, I am looking to pay back my private money lender in a period that I would pay back a car loan, anywhere between 5 to 7 years. Now, because I'm becoming the bank, I'm going to finance this property to the new buyer who's buying it from me over the course of a 30-year period of time. But I can charge a little bit higher interest rate, and I'm selling it to them for $20,000 more than I bought it for. So just to work through the math really quick, I need to make sure that the monthly payment I'm receiving from the individual who's buying it from me is greater than the payment that I'm making to my private money lender. And because I'm paying it back in 5 to 7 years, any money I receive from that individual who's buying it from me after that time period is all profit. I'm not going to have any expenses associated with that. Because it's a land contract, one of the benefits of that is I can treat that buyer as if he were a tenant and I was the landlord, but not have any of the landlord responsibilities. Meaning that if he were to ever default on making a payment, I could evict him rather than foreclose on the property. I become the bank, but I don't have to foreclose like the bank would. I could evict that individual. And so a slow flip is a fantastic strategy for that reason, because you as the seller, once you have this property, are taking on a greater risk by having somebody come into it that can't get a traditional bank loan. And a land contract gives you the ability to have some flexibility there. So how does a land contract benefit you as a seller? Well, number one, it gives you more flexibility as a seller. You can negotiate the price, the cadence of the payments, the interest rate. Because you're the bank, you set all of those components of the land contract in place. The second thing, the seller can charge more money than a bank would and probably will need to, thereby giving you a little bit extra income. And as I mentioned, and if the buyer does default, you can evict him as if you were the landlord and not need to foreclose. It also takes much less time to finalize a land contract than a traditional mortgage. Finally, so where do all the responsibilities lie in a land contract? Because this is a legal contract to purchase a home, the responsibilities lie on the buyer. That's why it is very much geared towards the seller and beneficial towards the seller. So the buyer is responsible for maintenance, repairs, and many times, probably 90 to 95% of the time, it falls under the buyer to pay all of the property taxes and insurance. Now here's where it gets interesting. In a traditional land contract, the seller retains legal ownership of the property until the property is paid in full. So essentially the seller is in an advantageous position because the seller is essentially the bank. And it is the buyer that is responsible to pay those property taxes and any other costs associated with the home, just like any other homeowner would. So when you're looking at land contracts, specifically if you're doing any slow flips out there, the advantage definitely lies with the seller. It is an advantageous position to be in if you are the seller utilizing a land contract, because all of those items that traditionally fall under a typical landlord, like maintenance, repairs, taxes, insurance, fall under the new homeowner under a land contract because they're treated that way, even though it doesn't switch ownership until the final payment is made. Now, these are some things that I've seen work really well with land contracts, specifically who's responsible for the property taxes. But please, let me know what your thoughts are. Let's engage in a dialogue. Comment below. And as always, just for stopping by, I have a free gift for you. It's aaronsfreetraining.com. It's a short-term rental calculator. You input all of the data, the purchase price, the income, the expenses, and it spits out to you whether it's a good deal or not. And it's 100% free, no obligation, no questions asked. Once again, thanks for stopping by. Have an amazing day.